If you believe everyone deserves dignity and equal treatment, no matter their background, like and subscribe. Amara Taylor didn't need to walk into the bank that morning. She could have easily handled everything online, but she needed the human touch, the reassurance of speaking with someone face to face. The check was small, only $500, but it was personal. It was a reminder of all the little things she was working toward, things that sometimes felt like they were slipping out of her grasp. The bank wasn't particularly crowded, the early morning sun pouring through the tall glass windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. I could see her walking confidently toward the counter, the weight of her sleek black coat dragging her with just a hint of elegance that spoke of years of experience in the corporate world. A woman who could command the room with nothing more than a glance. But the moment she stepped up to the teller, I noticed the subtle shift, the way the young man's eyes briefly flickered, the unease hidden beneath his carefully maintained composure. I was across the room, silently watching her, my instincts telling me something wasn't quite right. I don't believe in coincidences, and when I saw the way he hesitated, I knew that the incident unfolding in front of me wasn't just about a $500 check. "How can I help you today, ma'am?" he asked with a forced smile, but I could hear the tone of his voice, the edge of doubt. It wasn't the usual customer service warmth. Amara took a deep breath, her gaze never leaving the young man's face. "I'm here to deposit a check, please. I believe it's all set. No issues." But there were issues. I watched as his eyes flicked down to the check, then back to her face, and something I couldn't quite put my finger on, shifted in the air between them. The moment stretched on, and I could feel the tension building in the air. As he slowly started typing, his movements stiff, deliberate, I saw his shoulders tense. He wasn't just questioning the deposit. He was questioning her. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, a hesitation that spoke louder than any words could. For a split second, I wanted to march over, demand answers. But I knew better. There was something much bigger at play here. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, the words slipping out awkwardly. "But I think there's been some confusion with the account. I'll need to call over the manager." Amara didn't flinch, didn't even seem startled. She just nodded, the faintest touch of patience flickering in her eyes. "Go ahead." But her jaw was tight now, the corners of her lips pressing together, a subtle signal of the strain I knew she was feeling. The manager arrived moments later, his crisp suit perfectly tailored, his tie a shade of navy that only rich men seemed to wear effortlessly. He didn't even acknowledge her before he started going over the details with the teller, leaning in too close as he looked at the screen, an almost overt sign of his disinterest in the woman standing before him. I couldn't help but notice the subtle shift in their dynamic. It wasn't about a mistake on the check. This wasn't about banking errors or lost funds. It was about something else entirely, something she couldn't control. I glanced at the other customers in the bank. They weren't looking, but I could feel their eyes, curious, judgmental, barely concealed. A murmur rippled through the air. Amara's back was straight, her posture regal, and I could see the fire in her eyes, a quiet fire that said she wasn't about to be humiliated. But her voice, when it came, was calm, controlled, too smooth. "I understand. Please, take your time," she said, her smile barely there. But inside, the wheels were turning. The judgment that followed her through life wasn't new, nor was the subtle discrimination she faced. It was in the way the manager spoke to her, in the coldness of his manner, in how they viewed her as just another woman who didn't belong in this space. I wanted to step forward. I could already hear the words in my head, a sort of mantra I had whispered countless times. "This is not how it should be. This is not how it will be." But Amara didn't need me. Not yet. It wasn't until the manager walked away, phone pressed to his ear, that I saw it, the shift in her face. A crack in the armor she wore so perfectly, a fleeting moment of vulnerability. "I'm fine," she whispered to herself, but the words were barely audible, just enough for me to catch them. I could hear the crack in her voice. Just a whisper of the woman behind the power, behind the polished exterior. And just like that, the manager came back, his face suddenly flush, looking like he had swallowed a dozen excuses in one go. "I'm afraid there's nothing we can do here today," he said, and the words felt heavy, as if they were more than just about a check. They were about everything Amara had fought for, about her worth in their eyes, about everything the world had tried to take from her. "You'll need to leave, ma'am." I could feel the sting of her pride, the sting that would settle into her chest like a heavy stone. I knew the frustration that boiled under her calm exterior, and I could almost see the weight of it pressing down on her shoulders. But she didn't argue. She didn't shout, didn't lose her composure. She simply nodded. And I could see in that single, silent gesture that this wasn't the first time she'd been forced to walk away from something she deserved. But today, things were different. And I was about to find out just how different. Just as Amara turned to leave, a sleek black Lamborghini rolled to a smooth stop outside the bank. The engine hummed for a moment before cutting out, and the driver's door opened with precision. The atmosphere shifted, the air thickening with curiosity. Jaden Taylor stepped out, his tall figure commanding attention immediately. He had a presence about him that couldn't be ignored, not even by the judgy eyes of the customers still lingering in the lobby. His tailored suit was the perfect complement to the powerful machine he stepped out of, and for a moment, everything in the bank seemed to pause. Amara stood still, her head turned slightly, taking in the sight of her husband, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. I could tell by the way he scanned the bank, his eyes narrowing just before they locked onto her, that something wasn't right. He made his way toward her, his strides confident, not a hint of hesitation. What happened? His voice was low, smooth, but there was an edge to it, one that would have made anyone with even a hint of power take a step back. Amara hesitated before answering, her voice barely a whisper. They asked me to leave. The words hung in the air, but before Jaden could respond, he caught sight of the manager hurrying back toward them, trying to act as though everything was fine, but his forced smile betrayed him. Jaden's eyes locked onto the man, and just like that, the dynamic shifted. Is there a problem here? Jaden asked, his tone deceptively calm. The manager, already flustered, stammered, his attempt at a polite response faltering under Jaden's steady gaze. We just need to take a moment to resolve this, sir, the manager said, voice shaky. But Jaden wasn't having it. Without a word, he stepped forward, a commanding presence that left the manager floundering. I think you've had long enough, Jaden said, turning his focus back to Amara, as though the situation had already been resolved in his mind. The manager's face reddened as he fumbled for an excuse, but Jaden raised a hand, cutting him off. I'm sorry, did I misunderstand? Amara here is a valued client, and I'd appreciate it if you respected that. Jaden's voice carried weight, and with one last, defeated glance at Amara, the manager backed off. I watched as Amara, her pride bruised, stood straighter, her shoulders relaxing as if the burden she'd been carrying all morning suddenly lightened, even if just for a moment. Amara's lips curled into a slight smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She hadn't asked for Jaden's intervention, but now that he was here, there was no denying the power of the moment. The next morning, the bank issued a public apology to Amara, but Jaden, ever the strategist, didn't let the matter rest there. He'd made a few calls, pulled a few strings, and by noon, the bank had released a formal statement addressing not just the incident, but a sweeping review of their internal policies. Amara didn't say much about it, but I could see the fire in her eyes when she spoke to Jaden later that night. It wasn't about the apology, it was about making sure no one else would ever have to face what she had. The moment she left the bank that day, something in her shifted, and I could see it in the way she carried herself. The incident, though painful, had reignited a resolve within her, something fierce, something that would not be silenced. By the time the gala rolled around that evening, she was dressed in a dark emerald gown, a sharp contrast to the bright, unyielding spotlight that now seemed to follow her everywhere. Jaden, ever supportive, stood at her side, but it was clear this night wasn't about the glittering chandeliers or the prestigious guests. It was about the legacy they were building. The auction started, but instead of bidding for luxury items or exclusive vacations, the focus shifted. Jaden stood before the crowd and introduced the Taylor Foundation's new initiative, a multi-million-dollar fund designed to support businesses and individuals who had been unfairly marginalized by societal systems. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of Jaden's words resonating through the grand hall. Amara glanced at him, her heart swelling with pride. This was more than just redemption, it was a reckoning. When the night ended, people gathered around, eager to meet the couple who had just pledged to change the landscape of corporate philanthropy. But for Amara, the evening wasn't about the accolades. It was about something deeper, something more personal. As they left the gala, her fingers brushed against Jaden's, and for the first time that day, she let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "You did more than just clear my name, Jaden," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You gave me my voice back, and for the first time, I could see it clearly. Not just the strength of a woman, but the power of a partnership that had been forged in the fire of adversity, a power that would never be ignored again."